Hi, everyone. My name's Bailey. I'm a therapist getting my doctorate in counseling psychology, and I review self help books and pop psychology and tell you what's worth your time and what isn't. Today, I'm reviewing The Lazy Genius Way by Kendra Adachi. It was written in 2020, and she also has a couple other books, and she does have a podcast. I do, full disclosure, listen to her podcast, The Lazy Genius Podcast, I think. So I am more aware of her and her ideas than I have been of previous books, but I really tried to go into this one with a fresh perspective, and I really tried to see it with as little previous knowledge as possible. Let's get into it. So she says that when we get kind of overwhelmed by expectations, we either tend to go one of two directions. Full genius, which means trying to make everything perfect, making your own sourdough, making your own butter to go on the sourdough, making your own jam, like doing the most. And then if we get too overwhelmed, we go lazy, which is like
It doesn't matter, nothing matters. Like, I'm not gonna even try. I'll just get freaking Wonder Bread from the store, who cares?
and kind of fully give up. So her kind of compromise is that be a genius about the things that matter and lazy about the things that don't. On to what I liked about this book. There were a lot of things that I really liked in this book. The first of them being that it is very, very practical. Kendra really makes a point of being extremely practical and very, very much applying everything she says to real life examples. I also really like that this book tends to be very affirming. So the whole kind of premise is affirming in itself. A really strong kind of current throughout the book is that different things matter to different people, and there's no wrong or right way to have things matter to you, and that we shouldn't judge other people for having different things that matter to them than us. A good example for me is that I really don't care too much about baking, but I really, really care a lot about like having home cooked meals. So I don't know, I buy store bought bread and cakes and cookies and whatever. I just like get it at the store. I don't care. But I am very intentional about cooking my own kind of dinners and food at home. That's just a very, very practical, brief example. She is very intentional about saying you should not judge people for caring about different things. If you love baking and you hate cooking, you shouldn't judge me for getting a loaf of sourdough at the store, and I shouldn't judge you for getting like pre-cooked meals. Who cares? Literally, who cares? Focus on the things that matter to you and don't judge other people for having different things that matter to them. I also really like the emphasis she places on trusting your own judgment. You know more about your life than anybody else. You know what's going to work for you, and you need to trust yourself enough to be able to make that call. I'm a big fan of this. It's something that we say a lot in kind of therapy world of the client is the expert on their own life. So you would know if the kind of tips that she's providing would work in your life. You would know if they don't. She places the trust back in the reader's hands to determine what will work for them and what to leave behind. Another focus of this book that I really appreciate is how intentional she is with regard to life changing, day by day, week by week, and season by season. So she talks about living in your season. This is one of her lazy genius principles is live in your season. And she identifies that the things that worked for you in a certain season are not going to work for you in a different season, and that's okay, and it's not bad. And by live in your season, she means the season of life. You can let go of previous seasons and you don't need to compare your current life to that because things are different. Like your life is different now than it was then. I find to be very helpful and decrease a lot of the pressure we put on ourselves to maintain kind of consistent habits throughout our lives. Finally, something I really appreciate is that she's pretty clear about who her audience is. So, this book is directed towards women. She's explicit that it's directed towards women because in, at least in the society that she is coming from, which is the United States, a lot of self help and expectations of lifestyle are placed on women. So she's very clear that this book is directed towards women, not because women need to fix their but because so many expectations from society are placed on women. They are the individuals who might need more support with letting go of certain expectations and adapting systems to be more forgiving and kind to themselves. So I really appreciate that. I feel like I feel like it demonstrates a higher level of awareness with regard to the self help kind of landscape and where it's sitting right now. That's something I really appreciate from her. While the book was really great and overall I liked it a lot, there were a couple things that really didn't work for me. One of the things I wasn't a huge fan of is that there were pieces of important guidance and information that I think should have gone way earlier in the book. So she talks so much about being a genius about the things that matter and lazy about the things that don't, but it doesn't come until later in the book when she talks about how to figure out what matters to you and what doesn't. That I think should go way earlier. While I really appreciate that she talks about how privilege and identities and backgrounds can impact our ability to make some of these changes and implement some of these systems, that also occurs pretty late in the book, and I think it should have gone right at the beginning. She's very open about her abusive childhood and how choice really wasn't an option for her for quite a significant chunk of her life. I very much appreciate that. I just think it would have been much more impactful to identify the different aspects of identity much earlier in the book. Kendra talks about how her faith, particularly Christianity, is something that's really important to her. That's totally okay, and it also fits within the landscape of the book quite well. It makes sense that she talks about her faith because it matters to her, right? That's the point of the book. Be a genius about the things that matter, lazy about the things that don't. So I appreciate that she includes that part of her life. However, I do not like how towards the end of the book, faith, her particular type of faith, becomes part of the kind of philosophical underpinning of the book. She kind of is speaking about how we need to show up for ourselves exactly how we are and be kind and loving to ourselves. And it is underpinned by being made in his image and loved by God and being part of the divine, which would have been fine if there had been some sort of alternative for people who don't follow that faith tradition or don't think that they're part of the divine. Yeah, so throughout the book, she does a pretty good job of keeping it, um, of mentioning faith as part of her identity and talking about it in a way that's not exclusionary or alienating. But right at the end there, it felt kind of alienating. I wasn't a huge fan of that. Okay, on to the ratings. Yay! The first rating scale is, was this book enjoyable? I give it a 4 out of 5. I genuinely enjoyed this book. I mean, I know I said I was going to try and be unbiased here, but I listened to her podcast. Like, I like the ideas in the book. I think that it's pretty easy to read. It's really practical, but also, pretty, there's some humor in there's some personality. It doesn't repeat itself over and over again. Um so yeah, it was quite enjoyable to read up until the very end there where I got a little uncomfortable, and that's the only thing that really took it from a 5 to a 4. The next rating scale is the advice good and will it help people? I give this a 5 out of 5. The advice in this book is extremely practical, extremely helpful. It's not just about like domestic life, it's not just about business, worlds, and like work things. It is open enough that it can apply to whatever area of your life you're wanting to adjust. And it's practical enough to be immediately useful. I think the advice is great. I give it a 5 out of 5. The next rating scale is the author in touch with real people's lives? I give this a 4.99 out of 5. It is so close here. The only thing I took away that zero point 0.1 for is because I don't think she's in touch with the variety of different people that might read this book, i.e., faith traditions. Um, Outside of the religious stuff at the end, Kendra Adachi is clearly one of the more in touch self help authors that I have come across. The last rating scale is how much evidence is there in this book? I give it a 2.5. It's not really an evidence heavy book. She never talks about this book as being evidence backed or science based or anything like that. It's much more anecdotal and applying to her own life or other kind of examples. But again, she never claims to be a scientist or a psychologist. She never claims any of this to be science based. That I really appreciate. So 2.5 out of 5 on the evidence scale, but again, this book is not about that. Would I recommend this book to a therapy client? I would say yes, with one caveat, which would be to just know that towards the end, things get a little religious. And by end, I mean like 5 pages at the end, maybe even like 2 pages at the end. Outside of that, I would absolutely give this to a client. I mean, it's not very therapist-y, but I think that's a strength because she's not a therapist and she's not a psychologist. This book is really practical and helps people build systems for their lives and make marginal improvements that accumulate to big change. And for someone who's wanting more practical self help, I would absolutely recommend this to a therapy client. I hope you enjoyed my review of The Lazy Genius Way by Kendra Adachi. Thanks so much for watching to the end. I really appreciate it. Let me know if you have other recommendations for me in the comments below. And please feel free to subscribe to my channel if you're interested in seeing more content like this. I really appreciate you being here, and I encourage you to be lazy about what? No. Thank you so much for. I hope you enjoyed my review of The Lazy Genius Way by Kendra Adachi. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed my review of The Lazy Genius Way by Kendra Adachi. If you're interested in content like this, feel free to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of my reviews. And leave a comment on this video if you have read this book, if you like this book, if you have controversial opinions about this book. I'm always happy to hear new recommendations, and it helps me know that you're interested in this kind of content. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!